Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Development Review Commission regular meeting. Today is September 24th. Sorry, there's no date on here. September 24th, 2024. The Development Review Commission has created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, businesses, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. Any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its final decision. Development Review Commission recommendations to City Council are not final decisions. Tonight with us on the commission, on my right, Commissioner Stephen Richter, Charles Redmond, Vice Chair Michelle Schwartz. To my left is Commissioner Joe Forte, Linda Spears, and Barbara Lloyd. With us tonight from City of Tempe staff are Jeff Tamilevich, Ryan Levake, Michelle Dahlke, Diana Kaminsky, Chris Jasper, Lucas Jensen, Whitney Mayfield, Joanna Berry, and Eddie Garcia. Anyone wishing to speak tonight, please fill out one of these cards. They're located at front or in the back. And bring it up to Ms. Berry at the front. And please indicate if you do wish to speak on that card and which item you're wishing to speak on. You'll be given up to 3 minutes to speak during the presentation. And no one's online tonight? No? Okay, so we don't need that. All right. First up, I will go through our consent, or actually second, I will go through our consent agenda. First up, we have our meeting minutes for the study session and regular meeting of August 27th. Is there a motion for the approval of those? Commissioner Spears?
I move for the approval of commission regular and study session minutes of August 27th.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Forte. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, that passes unanimously. And the next would be the study and regular meeting minutes for September 10th. Is there a motion for that one? Commissioner Spears?
I move for the approval of the regular and study session minutes of September 10th.
Okay, that is moved by Commissioner Spears. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Forte. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and that passes unanimously as well. Unanimously as well. Okay, so next up will be our consent agenda. The items on our consent agenda, we will vote on as a whole and pass them unanimously. If there is one of these items which you are here to or wish to speak on tonight, please get my attention. Currently, the only one that we have members of the public wishing to speak on are item 4B, which we have pulled from our consent agenda. The first item on our consent agenda is item 3A, Arizona Community Church. Okay, we will leave that one on our consent agenda. Item 3B, which is Hisco Building Addition. All right. Item number 4A, which is the Quick Corner Gas Station. All right. Item number 4C, Delgado Residence. And item number 4D, Hoven Residence. And then item 4E, Cloud Culture Smoke Shop. Okay, those will be on our consent agenda. Can I get a motion for the approval of our consent agenda? Commissioner Richter
I move that to approve items 4A, 4B, 4D, 4E,
and
sorry,
3A.
3A and 3B.
Okay, so those are all the items on our consent agenda. That has been moved by Commissioner Richter. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
And that's seconded by Commissioner Redmond. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and that passes unanimously. Okay, now we will hear item number 4B, Brickyard on Rita. If the applicant would like to please approach the dais and present your case this evening.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good
My
evening.
name is Genevieve Nordia. I'm representing the applicant, Ms. Winnie Tang. I am from Metrotown Development. Sorry, I'm going to fluctuate between seeing and not seeing, so just bear with me. Brickyard on Rita, as we can see, it's situated east of South Rural Road and south of East Apache Boulevard, between Bon Arden and South Jessica Lane. It does terminate in a cul-de-sac. Currently, these are street views where you can see that this road is relatively narrow in comparison to the other roads in the area. The current zoning is R4, which is at 25 dwelling units per acre. Leaves us with 1,740 square foot per dwelling units, and with a lot size of 3,255 square feet, we end up getting only a single dwelling unit on this lot. A maximum coverage of 60% is allowed, and our proposal sits at 44% coverage. Based on the parking ratios, we have provided 6 bedrooms, for which 3 spaces are required. And in addition to that, we are proposing 3 open spaces for off-street guest parking. The first application is to reduce the site setbacks on the west, south, and east boundaries by a maximum of 20%. And the second application is the provision of second and third floor accommodation. With the reduction of the site setbacks on the 3 sides, the northern setback has been respected. The southern setback has been reduced by 20 feet, the western setback by the same amount, and the eastern setback reduced by 10% on the upper level only. All of this was driven by the need to provide some off-street parking. In essence, it allows us to provide 3 garage spaces plus the additional 3 off-street parking spaces without compromising the functionality of the main floor living space. The reduction of the eastern setback at the upper levels allows for improved curb appeal without compromising these parking requirements. The challenges of accessibility in terms of delivery vehicles and construction vehicles during constructions has been noted and will definitely be considered when coordinating materials delivery during the construction process. Considering nuisance from the emission of dust, odor, gas, and noise, in this situation, construction activities will adhere to all city guidelines. The effect on property values. This reduction in the site setbacks is a minor modification that actually allows for better utilization of the lot and due consideration to the challenges of the narrower street. The enhanced design will improve the functionality of the property, and it's actually expected to have a positive impact on the property values in the area. We do not anticipate the reduced setbacks to introduce any concerns regarding disruptive behavior. Compatibility with the neighborhood. It's an exciting street to go to. It's really exciting to see what is happening in that area. The limitations of the lot size and the restrictions on that lot make for a very challenging set of design parameters. We've referenced the clean modern lines and the materials utilized at the Newtown community development, as well as the Ulmus shipping container development, and these have definitely inspired the character of the project. The use of integral colored brick cladding and rusted corrugated iron contrast with the smooth light colored stucco, and this aesthetic then ties into the precedent set by these two newer developments along Rita Lane, ensuring a nice seamless integration with the neighborhood. The second application, looking at residential accommodation on the second and third floors. The second floor has got communal areas and 2 bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms, and the third floor has 4 ensuite bedrooms. This accommodation is being targeted to students because of its proximity to ASU, and trying to provide a quality accommodation for students within a residential environment. The building height, we have respected the 30-foot height line along the setbacks to minimize the impact on the adjacent properties while maximizing the potential of the lot. Bedrooms are orientated south, overlooking the parking lot, and there are no direct views over the western property line. This is obviously just taking into consideration the neighbor's privacy as the area develops. Excuse me. The same can be seen on the east and northern elevations, with the bedroom windows facing out onto the street, which, bedrooms onto the street, increased visibility on the street, increased security, good monitoring of activity along the street. And the northern view, no views over the northern property line, and the introduction, of course, there's that fine balance with getting light in and respecting privacy, and the window on the landing will have obscure glazing to allow for light to get into the building without compromising the neighbor's privacy. With regards to solar, there are no existing solar panels on the east, north, and western side of the property. The new building may project some shade over the northern property, which is currently making use of shade sails to provide some shade. And I think in the Arizona climate, shade is not always a bad thing. Properties using solar are on the southern side of this property and are not affected by this project. The traffic and parking, the parking exceeds the requirements for a 6-bedroom residence, but in trying to eliminate the too many additional cars down this narrow street, we want to introduce and make sure that bicycle racks are available to encourage their use because of the proximity to ASU. The design of these additional floors will incorporate features to minimize noise transfer. This application is designed with sensitivity to neighboring properties to ensure privacy is maintained. We don't cast excessive shadows on adjacent properties, and we believe that these considerations will support and enhance local property values. To maintain a peaceful living environment, rules regarding noise, privacy, and conduct will be enforced. The property will be monitored to ensure compliance with these rules, providing reassurance to both residents and neighbors. The inclusion of residential accommodation on these upper floors is typical of new developments in the area, and this proposal provides a homely environment with superior accommodation for mature students. That's all we've got at this stage. I'd like to thank you for your consideration. Apologies that Winnie Tang couldn't be here in person, but hopefully I presented it adequately. Thank you.
Were there any questions for the applicant? Okay, see none, thank you. And
Thank you.
we'll invite staff up. We have Mr. Jasper.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Chris Jasper. I'm a senior planner with the City of Tempe, and I'm the project manager on this case. Happy to be presenting with you tonight. So this is a request for a use permit to both allow a second-story addition and 3 use permit standards to reduce the required front, side, and rear building setback at 1432 South Rita Lane. The subject site is located on the west side of Rita Lane, south of Spence Avenue. It is located within the R4 zoning district, which is the multifamily residential zoning district. Surrounding uses include multifamily residential zoning to the north, east, and west, although most of those are single-family residential properties, so single-family residential homes. To the south and to the southeast are the Tempe Micro Estates R1 PAD, single-family residential subdivision. For context, the use permit standards are intended to reduce the front yard setback as it applies only to the second-story building facade and above. In the R4 zoning district, we have a 20-foot parking setback that is being maintained on the ground floor level. So there's about a 1-foot overhang into that, front yard setback area, and that's why the use permit standard request is present on that elevation, which is the street-facing elevation on the east side. Additionally, there is a use permit standard to reduce the south side yard building setback from 10 feet to 8 feet, circled in red on the plan set at the bottom there. And then the same use permit standard is requested to reduce the rear yard building setback on the west side. As noted in the applicant's presentation, parking is provided in a triple garage on the ground floor level where there is a communal space and kitchen. There are 6 bedrooms proposed, 2 on the second floor and 4 on the third floor, with additional communal spaces on the second and third floors. For context, staff has been through the review process with this applicant a couple times to reconfigure the interior. Some of the initial concepts included an 8-bedroom duplex and then an 8-bedroom single-family residential home, and we kind of landed on a less dense, less impactful 6-bedroom configuration, which you see before you. As the applicant noted, many of the design components have been incorporated from the surrounding uses, including the Olness project, that shipping container project. So many of the same materials are present. You'll note on the west elevation, which is the rear elevation, that there's 2 small balconettes, 1 on each floor, with substantial screening to protect the privacy of residents on the west side of this property. As the applicant noted, when an applicant requests a second-story addition, some of the criteria include design considerations for the privacy of adjoining properties. They have achieved that on the north elevation by using those obscure glazing on those landing stairs. Those are the only full view windows on that elevation, and they otherwise are no windows in communal areas or in kind of bathrooms or bedrooms facing the north. I'll note to the south that those windows do face an R1 PAD zoned lot, but the uses in that area are primarily for parking, so there is no actual residential building adjacent to this structure on the south side. So I provided some context photos. I won't go through all of the criteria here, but we do not anticipate a significant increase in vehicular traffic. We don't anticipate nuisances that exceed the ambient conditions. I'll note that the applicant incorporated several architectural elements to reduce glare onto adjoining properties, including limited windows and the use of obscure glass. The This project is not anticipated to result in the deterioration of the neighborhood or of surrounding property values, as it represents new investment. It features high-quality materials. And in terms of compatibility with surrounding structures and uses, there are multiple multi-story buildings, including 3-story structures within those Olmus shipping container projects that are right across the street on Rita Lane. And there are numerous 2-story buildings located directly south of the site as part of the Tempe Micro Estate subdivision. And there are other 2-story dwelling units further east. No nuisances are anticipated as a result of this development. So we do have, special provisions related to our second story addition requests related to architectural. I think the applicant did a good job of noting what elements they incorporated from the surrounding uses and buildings, those including that kind of rusted material, decorative metal on the south side, as well as obscure glass on the north elevation. The design considerations are kind of detailed in that previous point, and there is sufficient parking on site to accommodate guests. Again, we require a minimum of 3 off-street parking spaces for single-family residential uses. Those have been provided, and there is sufficient space on the driveways to accommodate additional parking. Getting into the criteria for the use permit standards, we pretty much think that in terms of what is proposed as part of those use permit standards, there are no anticipated nuisances or problems, and we believe that the application has met all of the required criteria for those use permit standards. So a neighborhood meeting was not required for this project, as neighborhood meetings are not required for use permit requests. We did receive 2 letters of opposition, including one with signatures from residents of the Tempe Micro Estate subdivision, identifying concerns related to parking, lighting, and congestion on Rita Lane and both Spence Avenue. We also received 1 letter of support from a neighboring resident of the project, which stated that the project was appropriate, but in that letter of support, there were concerns related to parking along Rita Lane. Staff's recommendation at this time is to approve the project subject to our standard conditions, so there are no unique conditions of approval associated with this project. That concludes my presentation. I'm available should you have any questions.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Redmond?
This is a simple question. I probably just don't understand it. This request is going forward as a single-family residence. And I thought Tempe had some sort of guidelines about 3 unrelated people, or not having more than 3 unrelated people in a single-family residence.
So you're referring to the code's consanguinity requirements, and that is correct. However, those requirements are applicable to single-family residential zoned properties. So our land use matrix allows for unrelated persons to live together in multifamily residential zoned properties, and this is zoned R4, multifamily residential.
So this is actually a multifamily residential application.
So the building is a single-family residential building, but those consanguinity requirements are not present in this particular zoning district.
Okay. Not to be satisfied there.
I can only report what our code says.
Yeah, of course, you aren't responsible for intent.
And Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Redmond, or Table 4-202B is what Chris was referring to, and it does state what he just stated, that requirement applies to the single-family residential zoning districts, and this being R4, it's multifamily.
Yeah, I understand.
It's a single
understand the
dwelling unit, I
Yeah.
should
Probably a better way to
clarify.
describe it.
Yeah, so it really boils down to the zoning, the land, how the land is zoned, what would be applicable and what is not.
Yes, Chair
in that
Johnson, that's
case.
correct.
Okay, I have a quick question. The balconettes, I'm not sure I've seen those before. Those qualify as a egress, I assume? And I know we talk a lot about when we see second-story additions that there's requirements for egress from those rooms.
Chair Johnson, that is correct, yes.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right, thank you. We will call you back up after the staff, or after the public comments.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will move into our public comment period. If there's anyone here wishing to speak on this case tonight and has not filled out one of these and brought them up front, please do so now. I will call out your name. You'll approach the dais and state your name and city of residence. And I will also call up the person who will be coming up next as on deck. So first up is Joanne Marquez. And up after Joanne would be John Deister. So if, Joanne, if you could approach, state your name and city of residence, please.
Joanne Marcus, Tempe, Arizona. I apologize, I wasn't really prepared to speak, but I so worried about this new development. I don't know if you have seen how tiny the street is. The plans look delightful. And our biggest concern is definitely the parking. It is a big problem on that street. Without the new development that's on the corner and this. So there's like, is it 6 units? The new one? So we had some events, my friends came, they parked in the wrong places. I had to have them go back out to the main streets on Spence where there's a little bit of parking. So I would imagine that the 6 units that are being built on the corner are also going to add to that small number of spaces being used up. And what I'm worried about is obviously safety. But one of my big concerns is that it's going to automatically create a adversarial kind of relationship when we have to say to them, no, you can't park in our parking spaces. I know they look empty, but there's people who live here. And who is going to patrol this situation? Anyway, plus anybody who's been a student, you know that it may seem like there's only 6 people and maybe only 3 cars. That would be great until the girlfriends and boyfriends and friends and the one crashing on the couch bring their vehicles too. So I guess my concern is safety, the parking, you know, if you're late for work and you have to leave, but they're doing their, moving their cars. And having a situation where it's more likely than not that I don't want to call the police on them, but have to even just say, please don't park in our spots. Please make sure you have your friends park not on and blocking our tiny little street, which barely fits 2 cars. And that's my concerns. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next up is John Deister with Robert Mathis on deck.
My name is John Deister, and I'm a resident of Tempe. So my son, David Deister, there is a homeowner in Tempe microestates, and he hopes to make that his forever home. And actually, we're pretty pleased to see something going up on the sort of not vacant but abandoned lot at the moment. However, you know, the proposed plan is going to put such a strain on parking solutions, and the solution that's being proposed is pretty impractical. That, you know, we just hope that you can not approve the plans as they stand. Now, it's a 6-bedroom, 3-story building for 6 students. Now, that can lead to, as we just heard, it can lead to a lot more than 6 cars being needed to be there. And that's going to inevitably lead to parking either in the parking lot for Tempe microestates, you know, people there work shifts and such like. So some of the slots are going to look empty in the evening, but they're not really. Someone's coming back there. And for guest and resident parking, you know, beyond the first 3 residents, you know, if people park behind and blocking the garage access, then you know that in the morning there's going to be a fire drill to get the right car out to go to class, wherever they've got to go to. And you know that in practice that's not going to work and people are going to illegally park down Reader Lane. Reader Lane's a narrow street. It's not well lit, and illegal parking can impede access of larger vehicles. And we have one resident who regularly takes paratransit, for instance, and getting like a fire truck or something down that street when there's someone parked on the street is a difficult proposition. So what's going to happen is, with parking on the street, there's no sidewalks down Rita Lane. People are going to have to walk down the middle of the road to go and catch the bus or walk down to the light rail. The lighting on the street is not great, so it raises a safety concern for people coming, in the evenings in the winter. And in conclusion, I just want to say that the proposed plan exacerbates the current parking problem is going to lead to access and safety concerns. And we're happy to see something going up there, but the plan needs to find a way of putting more parking or just reducing the occupancy so there won't be so many cars there. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Robert Mathis with Christian Curry on deck. Please state your name and city residence.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone had a blessed day. My name is Robert Mathis. I reside in Tempe. And I prepared a statement. I'm just going ahead and read this. The first thing I want to state is that I support a development on the street, but I really hope that the amount of people that are there are going to be restricted. I don't think 6 is appropriate. I think 4, maybe less is fine. That's my main concern. Good evening. For the record, my name is Robert Mathis. I'm resident of Tempe Micro Estates at the end. I'm here to voice my strong opposition to the proposed brickyard of Rita development due to the serious traffic and parking concerns I have experienced firsthand. My primary concern is the already significant traffic congestion. Since moving into Tempe Micro Estates 3 years ago, there are now over 30 vehicles regularly using a small stretch of Rita Lane. That is less than 500 feet in length. This does not account for the 6-home development at the entrance of our street, which could bring in at least another 12 vehicles. The street itself is only 19 feet wide and has no sidewalks, meaning that when cars are parked on the street, it severely restricts the flow of traffic. Public service vehicles, which, as you know and I know, are essential for the upkeep of our community, and they already face significant challenges on Rita Lane. For example, as shown on the image provided titled Trash Services Traffic, even a single service vehicle occupies the entire width of the street. This is without any cars parked. When the vehicles do park along the street, it creates unsafe conditions. Rita Lane is currently designed for permit parking only, and this system is essential to controlling the overflow from surrounding areas. However, the proposed development is being advertised as student housing, which raises even more concerns. As we know, student housing tends to bring a higher density of residents, often with multiple vehicles per household, as well as frequent visitors without adequate parking provisions within the development itself. It is highly likely that the residents and their guests will resort to parking on Rita Lane. I also want to point out that the small section of open parking on Spence Avenue is already at full capacity both day and night. As you can see in the image titled Spence Ave Parking, residents, students, and visitors frequently park there because that is the only area for non-permit parking. Once the 6-home project at the entrance of our street is completed, they're going to use that open area because it's prime parking for them, with it only being 10 feet from their door. It is likely that some of those residents will be students who will bring even more cars into the area that simply cannot accommodate them. As the residents who are about to be dramatically affected by this proposed project, we would like to know what the city plans to remedy this situation, and surely we would appreciate a plan. It is evident that this project as it stands does not account for the current parking and traffic challenges in our neighborhood and will only worsen the situation. I strongly urge the city to reconsider this development until a realistic solution for parking and traffic management is put in place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, last is Christian Curry. If there's anyone else here wishing to speak, please fill out one of these and bring it up. Please state your name and city residence.
Christian Curry. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. For the record, my name is Christian Curry, and I'm here today representing the Tempe Microestates Homeowners Association as the president of the 13 homes. I believe you have received our petition, and we are all 100% unanimously in opposition to this project without adequate guest parking on property. Unfortunately, both the developers and staff have presented an overly optimistic view of the realities of Rita Lane. The truth is far from what is being depicted, and out of respect for your role on this commission, you should have access to accurate information. I'd like to highlight some serious concerns that were not addressed, and that begins with safety. Imagine you or one of your loved ones coming home late at night, exhausted from work, and finding that there's no parking available in front of your home. In fact, there's no parking available at the end of your street either. So you're forced to park on a neighboring street, running the risk of being ticketed or towed. This happens in our very neighborhood. With some of those residents coming home late at night, they're forced to park in some cases a quarter of a mile away from their home, being forced to walk down poorly lit streets late at night, which, as you guys saw photos of Rita Lane by itself, poorly lit. We should not have to go through that just to get to the safety of our own home. Additionally, this past May, we had a medical emergency that required EMT to respond. In the photo provided to you, titled May First Responder Incident, you can clearly see first responders trying to get around a vehicle parked on the street. In emergencies, every second matters, and this rang alarm bells regarding access for first responders. The reports that were included, quite frankly, were insulting to the intelligence of the community and the members of that community. First, staff have falsely claimed no input was received in the report. For the record, while we did receive a hearing notice, none of us had access to the drawings until last Tuesday. In the developer's report, they even acknowledged the challenges of Rita Lane, yet they proposed a project with inadequate parking. The developer claimed that they received feedback from stakeholders, yet one is an organization that does not live on Rita Lane at all, and the other is Ms. Bowers, who is one single person of the 22 people living on that street. And lastly, if they had actually reached out and cared for input, they would have learned that we have an ADA accessible unit and a resident who requires paratransit. If the street is blocked and with student cars, because of no sidewalks, he'll be forced to navigate down the center of a street in a wheelchair, which should never, ever take place. Mr. Chairman, at the beginning of this meeting, you read the purpose of this commission and its role to ensuring public health, safety, and general welfare. Today, you've seen and heard serious safety and welfare concerns, and if approved as it stands, this project goes against the very values that this commission stands for. The packet that was shared with you, which hopefully I think was shared with you, shows the reality, and it is far from what is written in these reports. It is very disappointing to see that the staff and the developer were not fully transparent in presenting you with the clear facts. While we understand development is inevitable, it must be done responsibly, and in light of these concerns, we hope you can at least table this or stipulate that the developer must resubmit with realistic parking on site. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Doesn't look like there's anybody else here to speak tonight. So with that, I'd like to invite the applicant back up to respond to anything that you may wish to respond to.
And it has become very apparent why it has taken us this long to actually get to this point. Because of the challenges on Rita Lane being a narrow street, the density, the zoning density on that street, and the realities of Rita Lane, and we acknowledge and respect that. I just want to clarify a few things, because while I respect everybody has a voice that needs to be heard, I do take exception to some of the aggression that's tabled as us, as the developers, and the working relationship we've had with our Tempe city planner. We reached out to, as recommended by City of Tempe, we reached out to a community, CVAC. We had a meeting with them on Tuesday, the 30th of July. They advised us to reach out to Ms. Holly Bowers, who is a resident of Rita Lane, who advised us that she represented the people on Rita Lane, and I had a meeting with her on the 6th of August. She was provided with a set of drawings, and she had for me a series of questions that she presented to me. We walked the street. She highlighted her concerns and the concerns that had been shared with her by members of the community, the street in particular. And So to say that we did not share our situation is unfair and not true. Now, dealing with the problem of the parking in that area, unfortunately, discomfort is the catalyst you need for change. We have to acknowledge that not every lifestyle can fit into Rita Lane. And 2 and 4 and multiple car families are going to naturally gravitate to areas where they're going to be accommodated. Providing more parking on our lot, which is already pretty much maxed out in terms of parking, providing more parking actually just increases the number of cars moving up and down the lane. In an ideal world, the street would be pedestrianized. Some see the restricted parking as an inconvenience. Others will embrace the vision of a more walkable community and grab a scooter or a bicycle to get to campus. Campus is less than a mile away. A lot of students, plenty students, are making use of these forms of transport because of the costs associated with making use of a parking garage at ASU, the complexities of having a car and maneuvering around the city of Tempe with that car is challenges in itself. So we've tried to find that sweet spot. We've tried to find that sweet spot between turning our lot into a parking lot and satisfying the requirement, rather than we just prefer to satisfy the requirements as tabled, providing some additional off-street parking, and trust that that'll be viewed as an adequate response to this crisis. We trust that there are people, students, that will embrace the vision of a more walkable community and grab a scooter or a bike and live in accordance with Tempe's vision for the future of revitalized neighborhoods that are walkable, pleasant and safe, and connected within a 20-minute walk to their destination, which ASU and this accommodation certainly does satisfy. So I understand that there are challenges, but I don't believe that providing excessive parking will cause enough discomfort to actually alleviate the problem. It'll just encourage more cars to travel down there. So I trust and hope that you will consider this as a sweet spot between the two extremes. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you, we may have some questions for you, if you can stay up here. Commissioner Spears?
Is this a managed property?
It will be managed, yes.
So that if in fact it becomes an issue with parking, there is some place the neighbors can go and chat with someone about
Yes,
what is perceived to be a violation of what
most
your
definitely.
requirements are? Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. We may call you back up at this point. You're released. Now, if the staff could approach and Mr. Jasper like to address anything that you heard?
Yes, good evening, Chair, members of the commission. Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple, or respond to a couple of questions and concerns that were brought up by the residents during the public input portion. There was a question about how parking is going to be managed, where if, say, a resident of this property parks in a Tempe Micro Estates designated space, what happens there? Tempe Micro Estates does have an HOA, and those spaces are designated for residents, so I believe they can be towed through the HOA. There was some notes about how it's permit parking on the east side, so any resident or somebody who's parking in violation of that, that can be reported to our code compliance division as a violation of our parking permit program. And there was also some questions, some notes about walkability, lack of sidewalks around Rita Lane. So this project would be required to provide sidewalks as part of the overall development. on their portion of Rita Lane. So there's a sidewalk stub coming from the, I wonder if it's possible to see on these. Yeah, there it is. So you can actually see that sidewalk stub coming from the subdivision to the south. That'll have to be coordinated at that property line to provide a sidewalk on this property. See, I think that covers most of the areas that I wanted to address. So I'm available should you have any questions for me.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. You talked about the permit parking on the east side, and people can call to have enforcement come out, but what type of patrols does the city have going on proactively to make sure that's the permit parking only is being complied by? And then second question, if it's required to build a sidewalk for this development, but then what happens beyond that development? The pedestrian would then need to go out into the street to continue walking.
Yes, thank you, Chair Commissioner Lloyd. So I'll answer the second question first, because I know that right off the top of my head. So we can only require the provision of a sidewalk on or adjacent to this specific property from the southernmost point of the property line to the northernmost, so from property line to property line. We can't require them to extend that sidewalk any further. The idea would be, as this subdivision perhaps turns over with new development, that each parcel would be able to connect the sidewalk network ultimately all the way to Spence. As for your first question related to the permit parking proactive enforcement, I'm not terribly familiar with that program. My understanding is there are folks who tend to check in on these permit parking areas. I might have to phone a friend for more detailed information. So, I don't know if we
Have a friend here.
Well, I can try to be your friend. So I live in an area that has permit parking, and although I don't believe that it's frequently patrolled, it has been, and it has happened several times in the neighborhood and by us specifically, by us residents who live in that permit parking area. It's pretty simple to call in and report when there's something that's problematic that is not parking in the rights of the permit area. And the response rate that we've seen is very quick. So I actually want to give a shout out to the city for that, because it is refreshing, although it would be nice to have a continual surveillance of the street. It is nice that when it's needed, when there's something problematic happening, the response is very quick, from my experience. And I live in the very downtown area. So hopefully that's helpful. Others? I have a question related, there were a couple comments related to streetlights. I did notice that there is a streetlight directly on the southeast corner of the proposed development. If there is a request, and this is a question, I don't know, if there is a request for additional streetlights on that street, is that something the residents can coordinate?
Chair Johnson, do you mean to submit to the city for additional lighting? That's certainly something I can pass on to our streets division. They're the ones who are in charge of maintaining street lights on public right-of-way. If there are substandard areas, then we can certainly take a look and see what there is to do about that. The other thing I would note is that potentially with the provision of lighting on the front of this proposed structure, there would be some additional light cast onto the front of the property to kind of provide some proverbial eyes on the street, light on the street, as the property is currently, vacant and not doing that. For larger developments, say there was like a multifamily project that came in along this street, we would be looking to update any street lighting, as well as undergrounding overhead utilities as, warranted by that development. So, depending on future development, there may be opportunities to have that achieved privately as well.
And then for the parking at the micro estates, is that signed that it is there signage up stating that's for residents only? Do we know?
Chair Johnson, I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm getting
I
some
don't
nods
recall.
behind you from the people that live there, so. I don't, if it's a yes, then it's a, yeah. Signage for the parking that states that it's for residents? There is some signage. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I just want to make sure that there was something that indicated that that parking is reserved for residents. Well, I guess I'll wait till our overall comments. So the only other thing that I had is the parking or shipping container development. It looks like all of their parking goes out to Terrace. So no one that lives in that development utilizes, I'm assuming, utilizes Rita Lane, unless maybe they're parking on the street to get to their residence.
Chair Johnson, I would need to take a closer look at their parking regime. They are located on the east side of Rita Lane, so they would be eligible for permit parking on that side.
Okay.
I don't have those specific plans in front of me, however, so I would hesitate to.
Just something I noticed from looking at the aerial. They have a big parking lot on their far east side of their development, so. Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. If I may just quickly make a correction. I referenced the wrong table from the Zoning and Development Code earlier, so especially for the benefit of Mr. Redmond, it's actually table 3-102, which is our land use table. And I was referring to a development standards table, so I apologize for that mistake.
Thank you for that correction, appreciate it. Thank you. All right, with that, we will close public comment period and move on to commissioner discussion. So, any comments, thoughts, motions? Okay, before a motion, I want to say something really quick. So I've been on the commission for a long time. I've seen developments come on this street before, and it is a very similar discussion that we had specifically related to Tempe Micro Estates. I was on the commission when that one came forward as well, and there was a lot of concern from the neighborhood about parking increases car increases that would be caused by that development. So it is a problematic street. I think that is something that is evident. And now having the new residents that live in the one that the other neighbors were complaining about, coming to complain about a very similar situation, it just shows that's an ongoing issue with Rita Lane being so narrow and kind of exacerbating a little bit claustrophobic nature of a narrow street. I don't want to talk about where I live again, but I live on a narrow street as well, and there's parking on both sides of the street, and you have to have turnout zones that cars have to wait and let the other one pass. And so I empathize with the residents out there. So with that, I'm willing to entertain a motion. Commissioner Spears.
I move for the approval of PL 240205.
Okay, there is a motion by Commissioner Spears. Is there a second? Commissioner Richter?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Richter. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, and those opposed? Okay, so that passes with all commissioner members in approval, with Commissioner Lloyd in dissent. Okay, so with that, we will move on to commission member announcements. Any announcements? All right, city staff announcements. Ms. Dalkey?
We have no announcements tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, with that, the DRC is adjourned. Thank you.